Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of podcasts about getting together and sewing on buttons. Today, we're going to be picking up random buttons off the street and sewing them onto other garments that people are wearing while they're wearing them. Sometimes it goes great. Sometimes it's not the best thing I've ever heard. I brought in a special guest with me today, a gentleman who didn't know he was going to be on my podcast, and I sewed a button onto him. Hello, sir. While I'm attaching this button, would you please tell us your name?
My name is Jeffrey Pickles, and, I was not knowing I was
Mr.
going to
Pickles,
be
hold
here.
still. I'm very, very concerned about stabbing you right now. Hold still while I put this button on you. I asked you nicely to not move.
Okay, well, why are
This
you
is
doing
the quarter.
that?
No wonder this isn't working well. Do you have a button on you?
I'm not interested in buttons. Do you know how to sew zippers?
Mr. Pickles, I need you to just calm
Do you
down
know how
here.
to do a hem?
I could find a hem.
Do you know how to make a kimono?
I'm not even sure what a kimono is.
All right. Well, let's put the death in that one.
The death in it? Just put the death in it.
Put the death in it.
Welcome, everybody. It is not a podcast about sewing on buttons. It is a podcast about all things safety, occupational safety, how not to die at work, from how not to get sucked into a machine, by how not to, or how to survive an active killer. Anything and everything workplace related is what we're all about. And we are the Evil Safety Dudes. Welcome to another episode. And this one specifically is about construction safety. Super excited. We got a guest speaker today, AJ. Have you ever heard of that guy that we got on today?
No, I'm alone in the podcast fort right now, actually, by myself. I'm doing 3 different voices today. You all are going to be very impressed as I laugh over my own voice because I'm just that talented.
But before we get into construction safety and bring in our guests, what's new, Mr. AJ?
So mostly we've just been doing a bunch of family stuff this summer. We got to go out and do our IBC retreat, which is super killer. That was a great time. I think you were there.
Yes, sir.
I might have seen you.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, we did.
I did a judo class last night, so I'm moving slow today.
Yes. That's what judo does.
Yeah, it's an awesome martial art, and you can do it when you're 40 plus. But yeah, it's gonna take my body some adjusting from all the slams and throws. But I'm loving it. I'm loving slamming and throwing.
You either do or you don't.
Yes, but you don't try. You don't try.
You're gonna let me keep that joke, huh?
Yeah.
Do you do or you don't?
All right. Well, you know what? I'm too excited. Let's just bring in our guests. We are joined in the IBC podcast force by Mr. David Wantland, or Dave Wantland. He is a safety coordinator for HCI Construction and total fitting guest for construction safety.
Oh, yeah.
So welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much,
Morning,
gentlemen.
Dave.
Tell us a little about yourself.
I'm 63 years old, happily married, 24 years, 2 wonderful sons. I'm a resident of Sioux City. I live in Morningside. I've been employed by HCI Construction 13-odd years now.
Nice.
And have been the safety coordinator, I think it's 7 now.
Wow. 7 years.
Heck yeah.
Awesome. And then do I remember you do other stuff besides safety too?
I have been the past chair of Sioux City's Effective Public Policy Committee.
Cool.
I was a Reserve Woodbury County Deputy Sheriff for 13 years.
Nice.
I left that about a year ago. Right now, I'm just a private citizen gardener.
All right. There you go.
We've always kind of talked about how people in safety end up at a company or a corporation with multiple hats. So while you're a safety coordinator, do you have to do anything else as well on top of that?
Well, from time to time, I'm called upon to actually perform work in the field. As a matter of fact, I did that yesterday.
All right.
So safety coordinator and also like labor.
They call me an on-site supervisor, but more like it's chief cook and bottle washer.
There
yeah,
you
it's
go.
nice. You got to get in there and get your hands dirty every now and then.
Quite.
Yeah. So what are you growing this year?
We're growing several varieties of tomatoes. We're growing sweet potatoes. We're growing cabbage, Brussels sprouts. The beans failed miserably.
What kind of
no.
beans?
I don't know. There's some kind of bean that grows in a pot and it's in a little bush shape. And oh yeah, the heat just killed them.
Some sort of a little bean, huh?
Oh, what else? We're growing 2 different kinds of cucumbers that I try to take for lunch every day.
Nice.
Our strawberries are just, oh my gosh.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, they're just
Heck yeah.
taking off.
Cool. All right. Well, construction safety, we thought you were a super fitting guest speaker for this because HCI construction, it's construction. It's in the name. So,
Right.
What are some of the builds that you've been on? Like what kind of the biggest, smallest, medium?
Well, last year I supervised a project in Pender. Their local airport needed a new hangar, and so it was a building package that came from a company called Erectatube.
Okay.
And it arrived on, several semis, and there was a great deal of concrete work to be done. And since the FAA has nominal control over any airports, then there were a lot of federal regulations that we had to pay attention to, and
besides
hoops
OSHA.
we had to jump through.
So this was like super IKEA.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Like, here's your building. Put it together.
Yeah, the company actually hired 2 guys that had extensive experience in steel building construction, which was a godsend, because had I been left to my own devices, I just would have quit. I mean, you gotta be kidding me.
So the FAA regs, did they dabble into safety, or was it all on like building code type of stuff for like airplane hangars?
There was a little of that. It was a whole lot of protocol, if you will. For example, when you drove your vehicle onto the airport property, you could only go so far, and then you had to have a flashing red light on the thing or a flag.
Oh my, okay.
So you don't get hit by a plane.
That's
a little.
I suppose that's probably the idea. Yeah.
It's a little different than what we're used to.
Yeah.
We're just happy the employees show up at work.
Yeah. So, that's cool, FAA regs.
Heck yeah.
Once you think you get a handle on regs, then there's a whole new governing body of regs, I've been doing this for a while, but sometimes I feel like a noob. If I was on a job, FAA regs, I never probably read one. So where did they provide you with a packet of regulations? Did you have to research on your own? Did you have to buy a book? How'd that work?
They provided what we needed to know as part of the building plans and specs.
Okay.
And honestly, they weren't all that onerous.
Okay.
But they had specific rules, like there had to be a sign prominently placed at the entrance stating the federal minimum wage.
Okay.
It's like, really? You're
All
going to
right.
see that from driving by?
Yeah.
But it had to be placed.
Wow. All right, cool. So let's talk about, construction safety as far as, versus general industry safety. When I'm on a construction site, it's just different than when I'm in a plant. There's trenches, there's cranes, there's excavations, there's scaffolding. There's just a bunch of stuff that you don't see in the general industry. So let's get into that a little bit. And also I want to talk about the culture. Traditionally, it's stereotyped that the construction culture is less into safety than some of the manufacturing. You don't just work with your company as a construction guy. You see a ton of other contractors all the time. What do you think out there for the culture of safety? Not in your company, but just like in general.
Generally speaking, I think that a safety culture at a general contractor, or even like a mom and pop, a father son construction firm, is lacking. Anybody knows that it's easier to just put the ladder up and run up the ladder and scamper up to the peak of the roof and bang those shingles.
Right.
Is that safe? No. Is it faster? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always about maximizing productivity, because after all, that's where the profit comes from,
Right.
from completing the project. Is it worth it? Well, if nobody falls, it's worth it.
Yeah.
But after the guy's laying on the ground with a broken arm, it's a little late to say, oh yeah, maybe he should have been tied off.
Right.
We had a situation just a few months ago where one of our workers was in a position where they should have been tied off, and they, I suppose, said to themselves, it's not really going to be that big of a deal. Well, a nail failed, and the joist kicked out from underneath the employee, and he fell 10 feet to a hard surface.
Wow.
Oh, dear.
He missed 70 days of
Whoa.
work.
Oof.
That's a big lost timer.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, of course, that gets reported to OSHA at the end of the year, and it gets reported to IS Networld if you're a member of that organization.
And
And
unfortunately, we get to help with plenty of IS Networld.
yeah, exactly. So there's repercussions.
Oh, yeah.
Now, had he gotten away with it, I never would have heard about it.
Right.
Right.
It would have been business as usual. But my phone rang, and oh boy, I'm on the phone. I'm in the truck. I'm taking pictures.
Yeah, and if he would have tied off, then it would have been shaken up.
Right.
But
it
no
would
major
have frightened him.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
and there were other people around, so it's not like he would have suffered any significant suspension trauma.
Right, he could have got rescued right away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
See, certainly wouldn't have jammed up his knee like he did.
Right.
I really felt for the guy, but doggone it, it was preventable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's big movements. I haven't heard much about it in the past couple of years, but by not even calling accidents, they just want to call them like all preventable occurrences and different terminology.
Yeah, kind of giving it that word accident is
Yeah.
like more like a oops, oh, this was unavoidable.
Yeah.
But in
Yeah.
reality is, I mean, almost every single one is completely avoidable.
Yes, that's correct.
There are true acts of God
Right.
where like no one could have foreseen it, but that's not your average.
Just
injury.
walking along at work
Yeah.
on a construction site, a little meteorite, like you're just like, all right, well, shoot.
Let's talk about construction injuries. What do you think is the top 5 like most common? Not like in severity, but just in happen reoccurring. Always got to deal with these type of injuries,
Probably eye injuries
right?
Mhm.
and slips and trips.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
How about cuts? You see a decent amount of hands.
I don't see a lot of that, but I think
stitches.
that could be prevalent, yes.
Yeah, I mean construction workers are tough, man. They get cut.
A little dirt, a little electrical tape. You
Yeah,
call it good.
Yeah, and it needs stitches. They're not always getting stitches.
Very true.
They're not telling anybody.
Right.
But yeah, I see a lot of cuts in construction. I think the eye injuries is a big one too. You got any tricks of the trade? Any processes for dealing with eye injuries?
Well, anytime you're operating a power tool, pretty much of any kind, those safety glasses better be on your face.
Right.
Now, they don't do anybody any good if they're sitting on the dashboard of your truck.
Right.
Right.
Being frankly, a multi-million-dollar general contractor, HCI construction requires the employees to wear hard hats at all times.
Nice.
Sure.
And with that, you can carry your safety glasses inside your hard hat.
There you go.
Hey, you got them right with you.
Yeah.
Nice.
And you can have your hearing protection, which is also required, in your pocket, so that if you're using a power tool, you can pop those in and move right on.
Yeah. I mean, I think prevention, like you said, is the best. Treatment is just not have the injury. Make sure they got the PPE on.
Aaron and I saw these one guys that had hard hats from, what was it, the Netherlands or Denmark? And they were coming over doing some work, and they actually had flip-down safety glasses built into the hard hats.
Like some motorcycle helmets.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like you'd literally wearing them, you could reach up and push this little button, and they would just slide right down in front of your eyes.
Wow.
Yeah, they were slick.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some cool PPE out there, definitely. I know AJ, you've dealt with a lot of eye injuries.
I've gotten to do a lot of really fun ones with eye injuries, and almost all of them, the guys were wearing safety glasses. Almost
Yeah.
every single one.
Yeah. Do you guys do you got any big bottles of saline and stuff? Like construction is kind of tough because general industry, you got an eye wash station somewhere if it's a pretty decent sized plant.
Yeah, we're just like a nice running sink or something.
And if I get something in my eye, I could just go hit that button and just open my eyes and flush for as long as I need to. But on a construction site, man, that's tough. I like to carry huge bottles of saline with me, but I know a lot of construction companies, they'll have the medium-sized bottles of saline around. You guys do any of that? Try to flush?
We do, but not all projects are big enough to
Right.
get a trailer.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you don't have a trailer, well, in the first place, where are you going to keep the stuff?
Right,
If it's cold, you keep it in the truck, it freezes.
right.
Sure.
And it's in the way regardless. And typically the supervisor's truck is always filled with paperwork and tools and, whatever.
There's
Right.
not room for another person even in there.
A lot of times it's not in mine.
No.
Yeah. And speaking of that, It's the same deal with first aid kits.
Mm-hmm.
I've looked at a lot of first aid kits that have been in construction trailers and construction trucks, and when you open it, it's a big, soupy, nasty mess. You know, they're not always like tough, weatherproof containers. They were in the back of the truck, and you know, I need something useful. I'm trying to do some wound care, and I pop that thing open. It's like, throw this in the trash.
You pull out the gauze pads, and they're just like brown,
everything's
soggy.
gross. Yeah, construction poses a lot of challenges. You know, a construction site, especially moving. You know, it's like camping in a way. You know, you do a job, you move on to the next one. You set up camp. You do the job, you tear down camp, you set up camp somewhere else.
You
know,
always lose something.
and you never have that real fixed, you know, situation where, you know, when you're in a general industry, you could call a plumber, he could plumb in an eye wash station somewhere, but you're not doing that on a construction site.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the challenges that you see as far as safety in construction?
Getting the individual work sites to maintain a safety culture when you're not there ramrodding them is probably the biggest. I always emphasize to our guys that I can teach you safety all I want, but when it comes right down to it, everybody is responsible for their own safety.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's a challenge everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where people are doing safety, even when the evil safety dude is not there.
Right.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I like, you know, getting the foreman on board with safety, but that can be challenging, you know, unless it's coming down from the superintendent and the project manager that foreman needs to toe the line with safety. A lot of time they don't, and they're fighting you, and sometimes they're the biggest safety violators. But when you could flip them to working and enforcing safety, then I see the culture jump up a lot.
We've had good results on larger projects with designating just one of the field guys as the safety representative.
Nice.
And it's their job to go around and make sure that guardrails are up where they need to be, to make sure that inspections are done on power tools and extension cords, you know, all those little things.
Right.
So now they're kind of like the safety backstop. So when you come rolling up, if you find stuff, you actually have somebody that was supposed to be responsible for it.
Yep, and we even create signage, put it at the front door or on a stick or something, and it says, if you have a safety concern, see, and then it'll list the supervisor's name, and then it'll list the duly appointed safety representative. You know, it's just some guy, but it puts a face on it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that low-hanging fruit, you know, it's always there if OSHA were to swing in, you know, the bad cords, the grinders with no guards. I mean, that's just always there for OSHA.
The taped-up tools.
Yeah, it's just nice for someone just to kind of be in charge of just making sure that's not going on.
Yep.
What about lighting? Do you guys run into lighting issues, you know, fall, winter, spring, as far as when you get on site or you're still on site and the sun goes down? Because that's a challenge that the general industry doesn't have. Your light is the sun, and you don't control it.
If it's an interior project, you know, if you're not out in the middle of a field somewhere, then the first thing we want to do is get a hold of our electrical contractor and say, hey, get some temp lighting out here.
Yeah.
And they'll send the electrician out and they'll string up a bunch of lights and
Nice.
Okay, good.
Nice. And, you know, OSHA's got these special temp lighting regs, and I remember first time reading those, realizing, wow, I had been auditing construction sites with temp lighting and not even really looking up and seeing if they're following those rules, because, you know, off the top of my head, I can only think of a couple of them that just happen to be in a cage, things like that.
They can't be suspended by wire.
Yep. There's another like tricky one where you got to find out if the manufacturer says you can suspend it by its own cording or if it actually has clasps where you're supposed to suspend each light by the case.
Follow that manufacturer rules.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually does, like you said. It gets pretty intricate with those temporary lights.
Yeah. So, you know, OSHA could come on site and site just on temporary lighting. You know, another challenge is electricity. You know, what electrical challenges as far as getting electricity have you run into? You guys always using generators, or, you know?
The jobs that don't have trailers, which are generally the jobs that are shorter duration, and especially jobs involving placing concrete, generators are always used.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if the generator is anything like a modern unit, it'll have GFIs built into it.
Right.
If not, OSHA says that you have to have a GFI somewhere in the circuit. So all the supervisors have those, those gizmos with the 3
portable
or 4
ones.
Portable.
Yep.
Nice. Well, that's really cool that you're up on that, because when I'm training construction workers, they've never heard that reg. In construction, when you do electrical work, there's got to be a ground fault circuit interrupter somewhere in there, and a lot of these electricians are getting better when they put up 10 panels. Those outlets have GFCIs.
Yeah.
But not always, and so having those portable ones is a way to stay legal and still get the job done. I think another challenge in construction is weather, obviously. When you think of construction work,
Yeah.
if you're an empathetic person, you're like, oh, those poor guys, it's 100 degrees or it's 30 below,
Right.
What are some of the challenges and tricks that you guys have come up to deal with? Like, let's just go for hot weather because we're in summer now.
Well, you have to have a place that your guys can cool off, someplace that has some shade. If you've got a trailer, okay, great, because a lot of them are even air conditioned.
Nice.
If not, you've got vehicles that are air conditioned.
There you go.
And it's a super great idea to make sure there's one of those big igloo water coolers on site that's filled with ice and then some water. And, of course, it'll make its own water throughout the day. And or you can have, bottles of water like so.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, because even getting drinking water on a construction site is a challenge.
And I'm a firm believer in hot weather of using the buddy system.
Okay.
One guy watches the next guy for signs of heat-induced illness. And
Nice.
that actually paid dividends for me personally one time.
Wow.
Oh, let's hear the story.
Well, Guy and I we were working on the west side of this house, and there were no trees in the area, and it was early afternoon, so the sun was hitting us directly.
Just hot.
And it was 99 degrees and 90% humidity.
Oh,
It's
no.
just miserable weather. The typical weather we get in the Midwest.
Practically swim back to the truck.
And I just happened to look at my buddy, and I said, "You're not sweating."
Uh-oh.
No.
And he looked at me and he said, "You're not either." And I'm like, "We got to get out of the sun right now."
Wow.
Yeah.
And that
Holy
was the end of
smokes.
the workday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because
You
that's
both.
bad. You're
And we didn't suffer any ill effects
That's good.
because we noticed.
Yeah.
nice.
But if we hadn't been watching, who knows?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's scary.
A
That-
lot
that
of
was good.
interesting signs to look out for, though. People's temper, watching people get real confused, getting
Yep.
angry for no reason.
Yep.
There's a lot that goes into heat stroke, heat exhaustion. That's a big one I love to lecture on.
So, speaking of stories, I got one from construction and hydration.
All right.
I was a new safety guy. We were building an ethanol plant, and it's summertime. I'm making sure these guys are getting hydrated, and they were getting from Fastenal it's like a generic Gatorade powder to put in those things, And it was this one guy's job to do that every morning. And I'm just watching him, I'm learning what's going on and how it's done, and I'm watching him, and he kind of rinses the thing out a little bit, and he's filling up, and he makes his mix and all that. And then he closes that lid as hard as he can, and then he starts duct taping the lid where the seal is, where it meets the top of the igloo. He's just duct taping the mess out of it. And then he's writing on it. And I go, what are you doing, man? Does that lid fall off? Like, why are you duct taping it on? He's like, oh, so nobody pisses in it.
What?
Yeah, and I was like, what? I was like, whatever, you're messing me. I know I'm the new guy and all, but, I'm also the safety guy. I want to know why you're doing stuff. He's like, yeah, so nobody pisses in it. And he was dead serious. He's like, other contractors will come piss in your water, because they're just jerks out there. And
That's disgusting.
so we have learned.
I think that's assault.
So we
Yeah.
have learned over the years, if our tape is boogered up, because you're not going to get it back on perfect.
Right.
When you take tape off, if you were to, he's like, so if he writes on it. So if it's not my signature and the tape's boogered up, there's piss in there.
That's
Holy
ridiculous.
moly.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't work with those people. Be like, all right, General needs to take care of that contractor. Get rid of them.
Yeah, you know the construction world can be tough sometimes.
Well,
Have you ever? We've had police on our sites. You know,
We have too.
looking for people. You know, couple guys were bunked up together, got in a fight over a gal. One stabbed the other one.
Jiminy.
nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
my.
so I'm the safety dude rolling up, think it's going to be another normal day, and now I got to deal with the police, and the police got to go get this guy because he actually came to work after he stabbed his buddy.
Well, hey, you still got to get paid, man. You might have stole your gal at 8 p.m., but you got to work at 8 a.m.
Yep, get her done. You know, so I mean, police are on all job sites, but I've seen it more prevalent on construction sites, just in my experience.
Well, I think that guys who gravitate to the construction industry are more the salt of the earth types. Definitely, obviously blue collar,
Yeah.
and sometimes tempers just flare.
Yeah,
And this brings up a whole related topic of drug and alcohol abuse.
Yep.
right. I mean, the culture has gotten better, but back in the day, you're drinking beer at lunch in a construction site.
When I first came to HCI, we had a couple of guys who were known for, tipping a bottle.
Old school.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, real old school. And one of them actually came to work on a Monday morning on the 5th of July, and he was still 3 sheets to the wind. He was red-eyed, slurry speech.
Wow.
And he actually drove a company truck there.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, those were the bad old days, and I'm glad they're far behind us. Such people have long since been weeded out, but
Yeah.
I'll always remember.
Mhm.
And that's not uncommon.
No.
Seriously, I mean, I remember residential construction sites, there's a pile of beer cans.
Yep.
And it's like, when did you guys consume those? Because, you can't say at my house last night,
Right.
and then you brought the beer cans to work and threw them in a pile. I mean, you're clearly drinking on site,
And we all know they're not hanging out when work's over. They all want to
Yeah.
go home. It's not
Yep.
like they're sitting
Oh,
around
it's
after
dark.
work.
It's 7 p.m. Let's drink that six-pack we've had
Yeah,
in the
let's
truck
sit
all
around
day.
at work.
No.
No.
So that has always been in the culture,
Yeah.
Safety is always been tough to infuse into the construction industry. As a matter of fact, the general industry OSHA regs were written before the construction regs. A lot of the construction regs were just taken from the general industry.
Yes.
We've all seen those cool but super dangerous posters of those iron workers with no fall protection.
Oh, yeah.
80 stories up, sitting on an I-beam, eating lunch.
Straddling a girder,
with
just
no
scooting
fear,
around.
no fear.
Yeah.
Just another day on the job, The rites of passage that's been in the past for new construction workers, making them ride the headache ball up. That used to be a rite of passage in construction. That's like a super big no-no these days.
Should have been back
Jump
then.
on the crane ball,
Yeah.
and we're going to ride you up 80 stories to see if you're worthy to be one of us.
Interesting anecdote. and I'll phrase this in the form of a question that you may know the answer to.
Okay.
How many men died during the construction of the San Francisco Bay Bridge?
I don't know.
None.
Was that the guy who did the safety net?
Yes.
Yes,
they
I
had
do
a
remember
safety
that
net
story.
suspended underneath the bridge,
Yeah.
and the contractor finally had to make it a termination offense to jump off the bridge into the net because guys were doing it by the dozens.
Right.
They've just, all right, we.
Yeah, exactly.
I did hear some history on that project once. That guy got a bunch of flack for putting that net up because it wasn't common back then.
Oh, no.
Well, and it took time and
Yeah.
money and manpower away from the build.
But if I remember right, the end result was the project got done ahead of time
It's awesome.
because people, didn't have that fear of death. They could work almost normal from heights knowing that there's this kind of plan B.
Right, and and if they accidentally fell, no big deal.
Yeah.
And so, as you say, the confidence led to increased productivity.
Yeah, and so the time putting up the net and the cost of the net seemed to have put the project back in both regards, time and money at first, but then it ended up finishing in record time, which, like you said earlier, means money. When you get done with your job early in
Yep.
construction. See, the general industry, they have production goals. You got manufacturing goals, but the construction, man, it's all about getting that job done quick because you less man hours, more money, the less rental for the trailers and the equipment, it's more profit. It's money, money, money is on speed, 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 and that's always been the biggest fight against safety in my experience is like, well, safety's slow and we got to be about speed. We're here to make money. Safety slows us down. So have you dealt with that where your safety job they're saying is interfering with our production job?
I have.
Yeah.
And you just have to take it on a case-by-case basis. And I'm the first one to understand and agree with the idea that the job has to move forward.
Right.
Sure.
We're not in the business of standing around taping up cords to make sure they're safe.
Right.
We're in the business of erecting that structure and turning the keys over to the owner. On the other hand, if your project suffers a recordable, that impacts you in a number of negative ways.
Right.
And it's always after the fact that, oh gosh, we shouldn't have not done that.
Right.
We should have taken our time. We should have been more careful. We should have thought that through. Well, that's why I fight on a daily basis to do that in front of the situation instead of behind the situation.
Well, it's always been one of our key components for safety. If you do everything right all the time, you'll never know if you prevented anything. But you always know when you screwed up, and that's kind of what sucks.
And those big injuries, you talk about setback on production or, completion deadline. I mean, Big Blue, you remember that crane story in Milwaukee?
I've got that video.
I've driven by that stadium a few times, and I was in a safety class with the guy who was on site when it happened.
Oh, my gosh.
But, yeah, that job site was shut down for a year. So where was their production goals, right? And then, I was on site here in a plant just south of town where they had a fatality.
I was just thinking about that.
And, well, there's been a few down south that had fatality, but this one actually, this guy got shot back to life. So he lived, but he did die. But everybody ran away. As soon as that went throughout the construction site that so-and-so just died, everybody knew OSHA was coming. So everyone went, boom. And then the next day they came back. But OSHA ended up coming to that job site 3 times because every time they came, people ran away. So OSHA had to keep coming back to interview the witnesses. They got a job to do. They got to conduct interviews. So that injury set that job back so far because of just the OSHA inspections and everybody running. When you have 100 people leave the site, there's no work happening.
Right.
Well, I beg your pardon. I thought you were referring to the fatality that was suffered. Pardon me. That was suffered at the Port Neal facility when they did the expansion for CF.
Yeah, and those set back the projects as well. Anytime there's fatality, and then what they say about catastrophic injuries and fatalities too is the morale. Happy workers work better. You know, or at least a normal day you work better, but when like Pete's dead, your buddy, or some guy you at least knew and bummed a cigarette off of, and he's gone, that affects you. You're not just killing it. You're giving your A game,
Morale is a huge factor. One of the groups I work with a lot, they had a super duper stingy shop manager, and they would come in with busted tools or bad cords or broken ladders and be like, hey, safety guy says I can't use this. I got to get rid of it. And the guy would turn around and be like, nah, still got life in it. Take it back out in the field. And pretty soon, their morale was just beat down. They were like, my company doesn't give a crap about me. This is a, $200 fix versus my life. So my life isn't worth $200 to them, and they're mad. Well, all this stuff started to get changed around. Safety really started to get ramped up. People started to feel a lot more like, wow, I come in saying this is broken. I not only get a new one, I get a better one.
Right.
And I tell you what, it's actually shown through and through. Productivity's up, morale's up. People feel like their company gives a crap about them, so they give a crap about their company.
Let me bounce off that subject, ask you a question, Dave, on PPE tracking, because I remember doing construction safety, and PPE abuse is real.
Oh, yeah.
Where a guy, you'll give him a pair of safety glasses, he'll come back the next day, want a new pair. You give a guy a brand new pair of cut-resistant gloves, and he'll come back the next day. Oh, I need gloves. What'd you do with the old
Lost
ones?
my left one.
You know, how do you deal with that PPE abuse? That's not really a topic people talk about, but in construction, it's a big deal.
Fortunately, we haven't experienced a lot of that. But to address the subject directly, let me back up a step. We conduct monthly safety training on a variety of topics. As you know, OSHA says you have to conduct training on this.
Right.
You know, it's a couple of dozen different topics. So PPE, you know, is gonna be one of those. And I have made it our policy that if you abuse PPE, the replacement you're going to pay for.
Right.
Okay.
We will provide it,
Right.
and I'll take the cost out of your check.
Yeah, and that's fair. You know, that's been in the construction industry forever with tools.
Yep.
You know, I give you this tool, but you lose this tool. That's coming out of your check, you know.
One of the phrases I really liked was reasonable replacement. Like, we'll always give you what you need and reasonable replacement. But, yeah, you come back twice in the same week for safety glasses. That is no longer reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just got to learn how to track those things.
Additionally, I will occasionally visit a work site for a safety audit, and someone will have their hard hat in the truck.
Oh, sure.
Now, we wear bright red hard hats, so it's really easy to see if someone's not wearing one.
Right.
Well, I solved that. I bought a couple of pink hard hats and got
Nice.
great big stickers and labeled them with the verbiage, "I forgot my hard hat."
Awesome.
And I have one in the office, and I carry one in my truck. And the rule is, if I find you not wearing your hard hat, you can wear the pink one now.
Nice.
And if you don't wear the pink one, guess what? You're going home.
I like it.
It's a reasonable replacement.
Yeah.
And it
I
works.
forgot my hard hat. I love it.
We used to have a set of pink hard hats on the site, and I didn't buy them, but anytime corporate people came to the site, they never had hard hats.
No.
So we always had this box of pink ones, and they would give them to guys and girls. And but I'm thinking, why would they do that? Just trying to make fun of them. And then I thought, well, you're gonna know that it's the fancy people that you should act right, because that pink's gonna stand out. 'Cause
Yep.
there's not a lot of
Identifies the visitor
Right.
status.
dudes wearing, and the
pretty good.
importance of the visitor status. You know, it's not a lot of dudes choosing the pink hard hats.
Now, how do you guys feel about custom hard hats? I got a kid who just came to me. Hey, Jay, I bought it says it's ANSI and OSHA, and it's got all the stuff on it, and it's a cowboy-shaped hard hat. So it's a cowboy hat. And, I mean, it checked out. His company didn't have an issue with it. It had all the proper certs, so I let him wear it. But how about you guys, if somebody wanted to wear a bright red cowboy hat hard hat?
If it was OSHA compliant and ANSI approved,
Yeah.
I suppose I wouldn't have a problem with it.
All right.
Our guys, if they don't want to wear the standard hard hat, is because they want to wear a Kevlar hard hat.
Oh, sure.
And as you know, they're frightfully expensive.
Yeah.
It's nothing to pay
They're
a couple
expensive.
$100 for one. However, we have a safety incentive program, and in return for safe work practices, our guys are awarded what I call safety points. Each safety point is worth $1, and they accrue over time like a savings account.
Awesome.
And if they want to spend their safety points on a Kevlar hard hat, knock yourself out. Doesn't cost them a nickel.
Right.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
I love that. I'm an accumulator of safety rewards. I love to try out new ones. So I like that one. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Let's switch gears and cover the cold side of it, because now I've noticed over the years construction doesn't stop in the winter like it used to.
No, with the advent of sophisticated concrete mixtures and Gore-Tex clothing and
Right,
whatever,
right.
no, construction does not stop. It doesn't even slow down.
But do you remember when construction workers kind of had the winter off?
Gosh, I sure do.
Now it's not. You know, they're working year round.
Right.
And I got into construction safety, you know, when it was year round, you know. So this was 10 years ago, and, you know, it's like, man, it's 30 below. What are we doing out here? you know. And I was a safety guy, and I had to make the call if it's too cold to work. And the guys were upset if I ever say it's too cold to work because they weren't getting paid.
I understand.
So they wanted to work in the cold.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you guys do with, the January, the February months?
We will have 1 or 2 or maybe 3 days every year where the VP makes the decision, no, they're not working today. And the email will go out, and that shuts the whole company down.
Well, that's good that you didn't have to make it to
Yeah,
be
you
the
get
bad
exempted
guy.
from that one.
Yeah, because I always had to be the bad guy.
As the safety guy, you're almost always the bad guy
Yeah.
or the evil safety dude.
But
Oh, we're terrible.
but other than those times, there's still a lot that can be done, and frankly, there's a lot that OSHA requires.
Yeah.
I train like crazy on cold weather safety. I got a little touch of frostbite in high school delivering newspapers, and so my hands and feet were always a little sensitive to the cold.
Yep.
And as I age, it gets worse.
Yeah, that skin
And worse.
sensitization's rough.
So I know firsthand what it's like to have to be subjected to cold temperatures and produce quality work anyway.
Right, right.
So, I mean, OSHA has specific code like the employer is responsible for providing employees a place to warm up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that might take the form of a trailer. It might take the form of everybody's truck.
Right.
But the whole
Right.
point is you have to take warm-up breaks, just like you have to take cool-down breaks.
Yeah.
And the way that you dress is tremendously important. Make sure you have something on your head. 70% of the heat loss of the human body comes out of the top of your head. And dress in layers. And if those can be synthetic layers or woolen layers, so much the better. You know, don't depend on just one heavy coat to do the job. You got to trap that air because that's what keeps you warm.
What are some of the head things that you've seen that work well with a hard hat? Because that's not always easy.
We provide these kind of they're fuzzy hard hat liners that snap into your hard hat.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
And
Cover the ears and stuff.
yes, it covers the
Yeah.
ears, covers the back of your neck.
Cool.
So you don't have to worry about like a beanie, on your head and then putting the hard hat on it where it can kind of float and shift around. This
Yep.
actually is in the hard hat itself.
It's in the hard hat.
Ah, that's cool.
And then additionally to that, if someone wants to wear a stocking cap, I think that's great.
Right. Have you ever seen the ones that go over the hard hat?
No.
Yeah, there's the clip inside the hard hat. I like those better, but I've been on several sites in the winter where the guys have the things that go over the hard hat, and it's a warming device.
Uh-huh.
You're talking about trapping air, so it's.
It sounds like
trapping
a
all
Cousin Eddie looking sort of.
It looks wild, and they'll make them with about any design you could think of now. So it could look like a Dallas Cowboys helmet if you wanted,
Oh, okay.
But I was never into them, but there's a lot of guys that were. And then when they got popular, a lot of the guys' wives who could sew started making them and selling them on site.
Cool.
They let them come in and set up a little table, and then everybody had them on. And they all looked weird. They all looked like cone heads or something.
I want mine to say, I love my Chevy.
Yeah, you could do it, man. You can get it. You can get it on there. I got. I don't know if I prevented deaths or not, but it was definitely a scary situation with that warm-up place. I was looking for the guys. See, safety guy on the big sites, I had a trailer and I had an office, so it was pretty nice. I had a computer, but I made sure, kind of like working in the locked psych wards, time to check the inmates, like it's time to walk around, check the patients. And so it's time for my hour check. So I'm going out there and I'm looking for everybody. And I had to make sure they were taking warm breaks. I had to make sure they were doing it right. And I can't find them. Can't find them at all. Trucks are there. They're not in the trucks. They're not in the job trailer. They're not going to be in any other contractor's job trailer. It just, there wasn't that much camaraderie.
Sure.
I'm struggling to find these guys. It was hide and seek. I finally found them. They were in a little pull-behind trailer, an enclosed trailer, not a long one. And they had brought the propane heater inside.
Good Jiminy.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, so I'm like, they can't be in there, can they? And I open up the door, and then this is like, I don't know, 10, 11 guys. They made benches in there. They even made this cool like insulated metal panel case with some halogen work lights that face down to keep their sundries from freezing, the bonding adhesives.
So this wasn't an impromptu thing. This took planning and
Oh yeah, they made benches and everything, and they were in there with the propane heater, and I'm like out now, and I'm like, it's cool you guys created this, but we have to create this right. There's carbon monoxide issues we got to worry about.
Getting a little glassy eyed.
It's colorless and
each
odorless. You don't even know it because they don't know about carbon monoxide training unless they're trained. They don't know it's colorless and odorless and the same weight as air, so it doesn't leave. And
all they know is they're getting sleepy. Let's take a nap.
Yeah, and
it just feels good to get nice and toasty.
Yeah, that's all they know is it's warm in there. Yeah. And so that's something you got to watch out for, because sometimes if you leave people to their own, they'll figure out a way to get warm, but it might not be the safest way.
I had a few, and we'll just make it super short, but let's just say we were on a bigger construction site, huge concrete build, multi-layer structure getting built. And once they got to the point where they could start wrapping certain levels of it in plastic and then moving those giant blast furnaces, well, a couple guys figured if they pointed all of them up the stairs, it got really nice and warm upstairs, but there was no ventilation upstairs anymore. Yeah, it got real interesting real fast. They were abusing their heat privileges.
Yeah, so I got a hold of a wind chill chart one time, and I hung that in my trailer, and it was talking about, depending on what the wind chill factor is, how little of time you could be outside.
How little time is right.
And I was pretty amazed. Like, all right, I understand you guys want to work.
But do you understand that in 10 minutes you're going to have frozen thumbs?
Right. But yeah, we're taking longer breaks. We're taking more breaks than we are working. And so that's something that I didn't really understand, is if you took that month off, and then just came back to work when it was warmer, to me, they would get more done than when they were constantly taking breaks. Like it's a super baby step production. Like it's like at a snail pace, and I'm just like, what's the point? I felt like it was a waste of money, but maybe all the number crunchers like, nope, because we bid it, and if we don't get our man hours in, we're not getting paid. And even if we're not producing a lot, this is still advantageous to us. But I didn't always understand that, when it was super, super cold. All right, so what other things do you guys think are unique to construction that the general industry doesn't face?
I don't think general industry makes widespread use of ladders.
Definitely, I don't see him using scaffold as much as construction.
Okay, I was going to go to scaffold next. Scaffold is used in specific applications, but it's generally when they're putting an addition onto a structure or remodeling a structure. As a general rule, whatever the plant is, they manufacture XYZ widget. They don't need scaffold to do that.
Right. You know what I see a lot more in construction than I see in general industry is forklift man baskets. That's like common in construction.
Very common.
In the general industry, it used to be there a lot more. I rarely see them anymore. They've all been done away by scissor lifts. But in the construction industry, there's them huge ones.
Yep.
And you throw them on the lull, and they're totally useful. The siding guys use them. The roofers use them. I mean...
And they're totally illegal.
Well, I mean,
not totally.
If they're field fabbed, if there's specs on them,
Well, my understanding is that in order to use one and be OSHA compliant, the manufacturer of the machine has to sign off in writing that they approve that to be used with their equipment. And gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, no manufacturer is going to do that, because now they're liable for the lives of those men.
It is true that you can't use an attachment on a forklift that's not approved by the manufacturer. But, man, there's got to be a manufacturer that approves that attachment.
The only ones I've ever found was so you can't make it yourself. It was a man basket. It was fabricated from a manufacturer. And so the only way it could be approved is it has to have, full specs. has to have a weight, has to have a user limit, has to have the attachments to the forklift, has to have all this gear and stuff on it. And then in the back, it said what size from which manufacturer you were allowed to use it with. So it was like, oh, okay, so if I had the owner's manual for the man basket, I could go to the appendices and it would tell me can be used on, Yale models, blah, 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 blah. And then Crown models, blah, 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 blah. Like it would give you, and it was pretty in depth. And we found the one that they had, it worked with what they were asking, but
Wow.
yeah, if you make it yourself, you're pretty much SOL.
Oh,
Because you've got nothing. You got no ratings, no approval, no lifting restrictions. You got zero things, and they're almost all homemade.
I've seen some really good homemade ones. So good I had to take a picture of it. It was a pallet, but there was carpenters who built it. They built like a really solid bucket out of a pallet, and they would scoop into it. And these guys were really thoroughly protected. Like it was solid,
okay.
but it was completely illegal.
Super illegal.
Yeah, like I'm like, hey, I applaud you guys for taking this much time to build this. And you really tried to build it safe. It's solid. Your craftsmanship is good. But
If you built
Get out of it.
yeah, if you built the patio on the back of my house, I'd be okay with that.
but throw it in the scrap pile,
Right.
and crush it.
Take a couple
so
hammers
it
to
never
it.
could be used
Yep.
again. But it was good quality. But yeah, if you don't have a way to tie it in,
Yeah, there's so much.
all that forklift operator has to do is tilt, and you're like, burial by sea type of thing. You're just laying off. Plus the back end has to be made of expanded metal, so the operator can still see through it, and the expanded metal protects the employees in it from the moving parts of the mast.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, the gate has to only swing in. Handrail, mid-rail, toe board.
Yep.
Got to be equipped. Things like that. But I see those all the time in construction, and they are a useful tool. And I tell you what, I like having them around for fall protection rescue.
Yes, I agree. I have a kind of a fall protection rescue plan template,
Okay.
and then I can just customize it to the individual project.
There
Nice.
you go.
But it includes having an employee in an off-road forklift with a man basket standing by, watching.
Right.
And if somebody falls, get over there and get them.
Yeah, scoop them up.
Yep.
Boom lifts are my favorite because they could go over something and up. Scissor lifts are okay for rescue.
Pretty good.
But you got to get right under something.
Yeah.
And if it's a construction situation where it's dirt, you got to have that all-terrain one. But that forklift man basket is almost as good as a boom lift as far as articulation, reaching out over stuff. If it's on a all-terrain reach forklift, it could make it over all the ruts and everything.
Yep.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because OSHA has all these general contractor rules on like site layouts and roads and housekeeping and what's some of the, like, how do you just keep the ground safe? Because you talk about slips, trips, and falls. You said it was one of your big injuries, but like it's really hard to maintain that ground in a non-rut, tripping hazard. Like after it rains and people drive on it, like how do you deal with that?
Well, if you have a construction site where there is a steep fall off, not a vertical fall off, but a 50, 60, 70 degree angle,
Sure.
you're going to have to silt fence that. Otherwise, you're going to eventually lose that whole hillside.
Wow. So you got to do erosion control as well.
Right.
Plus, you get busted by the EPA for that if you're putting too much dirt in the sewers.
I suppose that's true. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
That erosion control, they'll get you.
I always think back to excavations. So many guys have the idea that it's okay to dig a big deep hole and then get in and work.
Right.
Oh, yeah. All the time. We
Well,
were just talking about that one. My goodness.
That's one of my huge deals because it's not okay. And once that dirt starts moving, it is too late. In 1 second flat, that guy is buried and he's dead. That's it.
Yeah.
It is no longer
flat.
rescue. Now it is recovery.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and we've had some in this area in recent history of trench collapses. And we've had in the recent week or so a little over that, OSHA on site busting people, for trenching operations and things. So it's real. When OSHA comes on site in their trenches, they got a checklist. And if they can't cross everything off, you're going to get a citation,
Here was a struggle that me and a couple of my crews were having last winter. Oh, Dave, I think you could definitely go along with some of these, but we had surface warmers, ground warmers, big, large area, because, they're doing concrete. They're put in a huge area, and then I got other crews working in partially constructed buildings right there. And so they were dealing with all of this melted runoff coming into the building. I mean, we're talking it's February, and they got 2.5 inches of water in the bottom of this building while they're trying to get in and get working.
Yep.
And then everybody takes the weekend off. So it's gone. Everything's shut off. They come back on Monday, and now they've got 3 inches of ice in the bottom of the whole place, everywhere. And it's just like there was no planning. There's no water removal. There was nothing. Nobody was thinking ahead for their winter planning, and now they have no job site to work on. You guys ever kind of run into anything similar? I mean, I suppose being ground crews.
I don't recall that we've ever had a job site shut down from poor planning. I do remember one project, and this was a lot of years ago. The supervisor wanted to make sure that the building stayed warm over the weekend, and so he set up the salamander heater, the big propane heater, to blow through the wall into, it was a kitchen area, as I recall. The problem was that the thermostat was outside in the zero weather.
Oh, no.
And so the thing ran nonstop
Just full blast.
for 2.5 days, and when the guy came in on Monday morning, all the laminate had fallen off the cabinets and countertops, and the whole kitchen was ruined, and boy, did he catch it.
He kept it warm, though.
That was warm.
He did keep it warm. Nothing froze.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah, so have you experienced, OSHA coming on site and on the construction? What tips can you give other construction safety people for, like, OSHA on site? Like, do you have everybody run away? Like, what do you guys do?
Since I have been safety coordinator at HCI, we have not had an incident where OSHA came on to investigate, some kind of issue or incident.
Nice.
Not even a random, huh?
Not even just a drive-by, hey, we saw guys on top of a building.
No, I have seen that happen, but it's been many, many years ago.
Nice.
In the last 7 years.
That's pretty fortunate.
Yeah, that's one of those, if you believe in that stuff, that's a knock on wood
Yeah,
moment.
right.
No, I will say this. One of the projects that we did a couple of years ago was a multi-story renovation of an old building, turning it into retail space and upscale apartments. And when the project was done, it was beautiful, but up until the last, month, it was just gutted, bare brick walls and, dirty concrete and whatnot. And there was a contractor brought on site, a subcontractor from Omaha who installed the windows. And their habit was to take the guardrails off and do whatever work, and whether or not the window actually got installed, they just leave at the end of the day and leave the guardrails off.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, somebody drove by and saw a guardrail down and called OSHA. Well, OSHA sent us a letter instead of coming on site. They said, hey,
nice.
we've been notified of this situation. You better get this taken care of quick, fast, and in a hurry. And as a matter of fact, I had already taken care of it and found out from the supervisor just exactly why this guardrail was down. He was pulling his hair out because he couldn't keep on them fast enough to get him to put the things back up,
right.
And more recently, we had an incident where another one of our subcontractors, he just flat out wasn't paying attention, and a pipe cap came off and struck him full in the face. The guy went to the hospital in an ambulance, and OSHA was on site the next day. I met them there, and he actually had an intern that was with him. Like, wow, OSHA has interns?
We ran into that once,
yeah,
too.
we've had several interns.
So he at least claimed to not be there for any other reason except to inquire as to the circumstances.
Right.
I'd taken a bunch of photographs, which I emailed him.
Mm-hmm.
I took him to the area where the incident occurred, explained to him what I believe happened. There were no witnesses, but I kind of reconstructed it. And he, and made some notes. And that was all.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Easy peasy.
Last question for you, which goes along with all that, is like subcontractor corralling or safety management, or it's a real issue for generals. It's issues for other contractors. When you got a good general, you got some decent to good safety conscious contractors, but then you got that one sub. It could be the ma and pa outfit who just
Generally is the ma and pa
yeah,
outfit.
they don't know anything about safety, old school. How do you deal with that? Do you work with them? Do you kick them off? How do you deal with that naughty subcontractor that's naughty with safety?
Well, firstly, the subcontractor probably has to sign some kind of a contract, an agreement, before he begins work. So my advice would be to make sure there is a clause somewhere in that contract that says subcontractor agrees to abide by general contractor's safety policy in its entirety, blah, blah, blah.
And all OSHA rules.
Yep.
Yep.
And if that doesn't work, then providing you have the support from the upper management, boot them.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as you know, the general contractor has overall responsibility for safety at the work site. And if some incident happens, the subcontractor may be on the hook for it, but you're going to be on the hook for it.
That's for sure.
And that's cool that they give you that, authority to do that. I was on a site one time, and we were just subs. And then this other sub got on site. They were bin jackers. They build the big grain bins. And these guys were old school. And that general contractor safety guy was no joke there. He was hardcore. And so these guys are going to have to work from elevation all the time, over 6 feet. And he's like, all right, let me check your harnesses. And they go, what's that?
I knew it. What's that?
Yeah.
And so he started digging into these guys, and they pitched a fit, and they left. They left the site. He didn't have to kick them out.
Voluntarily. Problem took
But-
care of itself.
But it didn't.
Oh, no.
Because then the superintendent, the project manager's like, what? What, safety man? You ran off our bin jackers? We can't get other bin jackers on this short notice. Blah, 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 blah. You better get those guys back on here and work with them. Blah, 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 blah. And, or you're gone, What do we need a safety man for if there's no construction? So he had to call them, find their number, call them, get them back on site, work with them, help them out as the general. And, I'm not saying I'm agree with how everything went down. I was just on the sidelines as another sub, but I'm just watching it going, it's a tough spot sometimes,
Yep.
You got to have construction. But sometimes as the general contractor safety guy, you're actually become the safety trainer of a sub sometimes.
I had a situation, it wasn't last year, I think it was the year before last. I arrived on site to a project to do an audit, and the plumbing contractor, who we no longer retain the services of, plumbing contractor, couple of guys were there in sleeveless T-shirts and shorts and tennis shoes and bareheaded.
Oh,
Okay.
awesome. So they're ready to go skateboard.
I walked up to the owner's son, who apparently, I guess he was like the foreman, and said, you need to have work boots with safety toes, and you need to have long pants, and you need to have hard hats. Well, it was never like that before. I said, if you're referring to when I first came to the company and I knew you by your first name, you're right. It wasn't like that before.
Right.
And guess what? There's a new sheriff in town,
Yeah.
and we got new policy, and here's what it is. Well,
Yeah.
we're just going to leave. And I said, do you think that hurts me?
Right.
You'll be in breach of contract, not me.
Right.
Right.
You
Oh.
signed the paper.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's, kind of why we named the show what we named it, the evil safety dudes.
Because we
missed that
are.
one.
I missed it. I'm sleeping on it. But it's true, though. We get stuck all the time having to just – it sounds nitpicky and it sounds terrible that you have to have somebody, but it's unfortunate that that's literally where the industry is. You have to have somebody that's going around going, hey, I need you to do these basic things so you don't get your feet crushed or, your head ripped off.
The safety guy always ends up being made the heavy.
We're the bad
But
guys.
it's like I say, everyone should be responsible for their own safety.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
what
not
we're
your
working
mommy.
towards. Yeah, that's what we're working towards. Until then, we're the evil mommies of safety.
I'm glad I didn't try to jump in on that one. I wouldn't have made it.
But you're right.
By the way, you can't call me an evil safety mom.
Okay.
That one's off the table.
That one's off limits.
Off table.
But how about evil babysitter of construction workers?
That's a little wordy, but I mean, okay.
Yeah, it is. But, I've been called that. You know, I've been,
Glorified babysitter.
coming from the safety staffing world where we were get paid to staff safety people, I would get a call. We need a babysitter,
Yeah.
And that's how we're looked at.
You know what?
sometimes.
If
But
you want me to babysit your 5-year-old construction workers, that's fine.
as long as you signing that check,
That's right.
I will be the evil safety dude.
That's
I will
right.
babysit them. But it's just a shame they're letting you know where their culture's at, and
It is a shame.
it shouldn't be. When in my opinion, when safety is done well, the safety person is not viewed as the evil safety dude or dudette. They're viewed as the resource.
Well, honestly, if safety
Yeah.
is done right, when the safety professional arrives to check things out, they got nothing to do.
Yeah, it's hard for them. Yeah, it's hard, and that's what I tell people with OSHA. Let's make it hard for them to find something on us.
Yep.
Let's make them work. Their job's too easy. Everywhere they go, it's too easy. It's just too easy. Let's make it tough.
That'd be great.
We'll end on that note, everybody. So, Mr. Dave Wantland, we super thank you for coming on to our podcast, and we
glad
really
to be
enjoyed
here.
you.
Heck yeah.
It was good just to dive into the deep weeds of the challenges of construction safety. It's a neglected topic, even in the safety world. When you go to the fancy safety meetings, 80-90% of it's on general industry, and I get the construction guys going, what about us? So it's nice just to deal with that. So thank you for coming on the show. For Mr. AJ Hanscom and Aaron Nicino, we are the
Evil safety dudes.
mommy babysitters.
Ah, see, that's you got me. He did.
Until next
Set
time,
me up.
everybody, stay safe.